In my last week video, I talked about the boomer cycle and the financial crisis and what's really behind it. And I summarized it that it's the central bank and their monetary policy which drives these financial crises. And one of my subscribers asked me a question, why these central banks are doing it. So in this video, we're going to cover that. Without further ado, let's dive into it. What is up, YouTubers of Canada? Thanks for joining in. As you know, the purpose of this channel is to educate my audience about the real estate market in Canada, with particular focus in Toronto, GTA, as well as some of the macroeconomic factors that have an impact on the Canadian real estate market. In this video, we're going to talk about the reason why central banks are doing it. Before we go into that, understand how the monetary system or the financial system that we have, how this has evolved in the history of mankind. So back in those days, people used to trade like, if I have a bag of wheat and you have a bag of fruits, I can exchange that in order to get some fruits for my own consumption. Moving forward, gold coins and the silver coins became the standard of currency, right? So people used to purchase goods and services by using those gold coins and silver coins as a currency, as a money. But the value, the amount of, the currency in the system is not changing, right? It's not increasing or decreasing because you're not producing gold coin as you print money today, right? So the amount of currency is kind of stagnant, and the goods and services that you buy, the value of that goods and services is kind of staying same as well, because unless you start mass producing those goods and services, then the value of those goods and services will go down. But at an average level, the value of the goods and services stay the same. So there was no concept of inflation in that case, right? Until such time when the clever banker, has an idea that I will ask people to actually deposit the gold coins into my system, my backup system, in order to give them some sort of, convenience, right? Because hey, you have to keep the big boxes of gold with you in order to trade. Why don't you deposit that gold in my deposit system, which is bank, and I will issue you a certificate or kind of a promissory note that guarantees you that you can exchange goods and services with this certificate based upon its value, because you can anytime redeem the certificate with me, and you can get your gold back. But it becomes convenient for you to not to carry the gold and silver with you. You just carry the certificate in exchange with anybody who's selling something like a goods and services. And then what happened was that banker who was depositing the gold and silver in his deposit system, he started lending that money out, because he thinks that there is very less chance that everybody who has deposited gold in my deposit system will take that gold out at a given time. So based on that theory, he started lending that gold out to the consumers, the borrowers, and charging interest on that. And as a result of that, what happened was there was not enough gold in the deposit system. Then the bank was lending out, which is basically the birth of fractional reserve theory. And what happened was, this became evolved over the time, and then when those different banks became autonomous and distributed system, then there was a concept of central bank came up, right? So central bank was powered by the governments in order to centralize everything and governed by the government as a single entity, ultimately to apply monopoly and control and power in terms of who is going to control the financial system and the circulation of money and everything. Fast forward to 1913, when the Federal Reserve came on board, and this basically gives the birth of the true fiat currency in our current financial system. Basically, what happens is the central banks are the governing body, so they basically govern the system. They make regulations. They make sure that the commercial banks that are running under them are basically running smoothly and fulfilling all the promises and meeting all the requirements that the governing body, central bank, is asking for. So, but what we have seen in the history that all the financial crises that we had in the recent history, like 2008 crisis, the recent crisis in Eurozone, Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal, all happened because of central bank's monetary policy. Central bank's monetary policy is basically they are the one responsible to govern that bad practices happening in the commercial banking system has to be stopped if they know this is what's happening. So if the banks are printing unlimited amount of money and creating a huge debt growth in the system, that is ultimately going to create an asset bubble, and eventually it can go towards the bust cycle. In 2008 in US, same thing happened. Dot-com bubble, same thing happened. Back in 90s and 80s, what we saw in Japan happened, same result. Bank of Japan, was doing some bad practices and creating a huge credit growth in the system, which is not going to sustain, and ultimately it went bust. And what we saw was a long-term recession in Japan, which they even have not come out of it. Why central banks are doing it? The reason central banks are doing it is because central banks want to be the bank in the town, the only bank in the town. And this is the reason why they're bringing some measures like their own digital currency, and if you heard of universal basic income. And this information is not widely available, right? So you cannot find this information in any official banking blog. But if you further do some research and understand, what's happening and see the patterns, what's happening in the history in terms of the financial crisis, you will understand why. And universal basic income is not a new idea. It has been around for quite some time, but they're bringing it back into the mainstream media for a reason. Why are we talking about the central bank's own digital currency? For the same reason, because central bank wants to have more power, more monopoly, more control, not only in the financial system but also in our daily lives. So today the commercial banks are basically playing a role of a middleman, where the central bank issues the governance and the regulations, and then the commercial banks actually generate credit, create new money into the system, and that money goes into the consumer wallet. And right now, because it takes a lot of administrative work and then lots of bureaucracy, because the government has to be involved and they have to write financial regulations and all that stuff. In order to avoid that, plus to get more monopoly, more control, more power, central banks are bringing their own digital currency. It's not same as cryptocurrency, just not to be confused with that. It's a digital currency that is being controlled, managed, monitored, validated, and controlled in any shape or form by the central bank. So they have control what transaction has to be approved, what not. They can control how much credit is going to get into any deposit account, and they can disapprove, they can take the credit back, all sorts of things. Basically, they will control everything. And this is part of the Great Reset program, if you have heard of. I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist here, but this is a reality. You can search, you can Google. A lot of central banks are already piloting it. So it's not something coming into the future. It is happening right now, but not at a large scale. And the reason why it's not happening at a large scale is because there's some local laws in every country with regards to the current financial system. Of course, this will take time to run it at a wider scale, but this is currently in pilot running. And the universal basic income is about the same idea, guys. Great reset. This financial system is running in its last days because it's not going to sustain the way these banks are printing money and financing government debt. What is the end? Like, Canadian government has taken $356 billion so far in the pandemic. Who is going to pay it back, right? What's the end? Like, there is no end, right? They will keep printing money until such time it's not going to print anymore, and the system will collapse itself under its own weight, and then there will be a new system emerged and introduced by the big financial authorities. What it would look like, I don't know, but the signs that we are seeing right now, digital currency, universal basic income, it leads towards a great reset, a great financial reset, and then there will be more control, more regulations, and everybody will be just under the one big brother. That's it from my side today. Hope you like it. If you like it, give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and let me know what you think about what's happening in the financial system in your view, your viewpoint, so that I can also understand your concerns and questions, and then we can talk about in our next video. Until next time, take care.